أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send again His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, the Prince of the Believers, the Commander of the Faithful, the Protector of the Prophet and his message, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, dear respected brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So brothers and sisters, in the past nights, in the past 2 weeks, we've covered an essential topic that relates to each and every one of us here today. And that is that pursuit of a better me. That discussion on ethics. How do I become a better person? Not for anybody else, but for me first and foremost. So that I can strengthen my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about a number of specific topics on that journey, in that pursuit of a better me. Inshallah, in these next coming nights, for the first 3 nights, what we'd like to do is we'd like to take a new approach when it comes to this pursuit of a better me. And that is looking a little bit more into our history. Because we find that our history is extremely significant into knowing who we are as individuals. When we first start out with this saying of, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing of being the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated and loyal on the path of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam after the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Why do we say that? Why do we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that blessing? Why do we hold so dear to that individual, that character, that personality called Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, the son-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the cousin of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the one who was the successor, the protector of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi? Why do we hold so dear to him? Why is it that you find so many people saying, Ya Ali, whenever they want to get up, whenever they want to climb stairs, whenever they want to do any task? That name, Ya Ali, brings such an energy from within their very essence in every single thing that they do. Why the connection? Why the attachment? Why Ali? So we ask ourselves this question. Inshallah, in these next 3 nights, starting from tonight, we're going to be looking into the history of who was Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who was this man we call the Commander of the Faithful, the Prince of the Believers? So inshallah, taking a historical approach, and then followed by these 3 nights will be nights in commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam by respected Sayyid Abu Dharr, who will go into the tragedy, the martyrdom, and talk about the essential creed and beliefs that we have in that attachment to Imam Ali alayhi salam that takes us to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi and ultimately takes us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So just to give a general outline, an overview of what we're going to be doing in these next 3 nights. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a historical analysis of the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And just as a disclaimer, this is a brief analysis. Because the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam not only requires an entire series of lectures, but lectures upon lectures. So inshallah, what we're going to do is going into a brief look into the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam, see who this individual was. Beyond that, look and examine at the words of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the words of the Imams in relation to this life of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And then take that further and see the practical implementations for us in our daily lives today. And that's something that we've had as a theme throughout the past nights as well. So looking at the history, looking at the words of the Immaculate alayhim salam, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then taking that practical implementation for us as the individuals that we have this attachment to Ali ibn Abi Talib, understanding why we have it and why we should have it. So let's start off by going and outlining what we're actually going to be covering beyond those 3 steps in the specific history for the next 3 nights. And the idea of giving us this overview, brothers and sisters, is to see where we're taking this with. A lot of times we might have discussions and they might have a good spirit to it. But inshallah, the better the organization of it and seeing step by step what we're actually going to be discussing and talking about, inshallah will be of some type of benefit. So regarding the outline of the historical analysis, we're going to be looking at one, the Imam Ali alayhi salam during the life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in that, we're going to be looking at his birth and childhood, his adolescence and his adulthood. After that, we're going to be looking at the Imam after the death of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. What happened at the time of the death of the Holy Prophet and then after the death of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And in that, we're going to be looking at when Imam Ali alayhi salam was not the Caliph of the Muslim Ummah and then when he was the Caliph of the Muslim Ummah and the different stances that he took in both of those positions. After that, we're going to end with the legacy of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam in the eyes of Muslims and non-Muslims, highlighting what? The non-Muslims, and seeing outside of us who call ourselves the Muslims, the people that follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and especially outside of the ones who call themselves the Shi'ia of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, what do other people think of Ali ibn Abi Talib? This individual, was he just for the Shi'ia? Was he just for Islam in general? Or was he for the entire world? Was he a mercy to mankind just like his master, the Prophet ﷺ was? So inshallah, brothers and sisters, that's an overview. We'll get started right into it after Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, Imam Ali alayhi salam was born on the 13th of Rajab in 600 AD. And Imam Ali alayhi salam was the son of Abu Talib and Fatima bint Asad. Both of these individuals being ones who held strong to the Abrahamic faith. They were considered to be of the Unitarians of the time, where they followed only one God. So some people come and ask and they say, well, we knew Judaism came and we know Christianity came. And after time, a lot of the message became diluted and changed over that period of time. Were these individuals, were they disbelievers or were they believers? And what did they believe in? Abu Talib alayhi salam and Fatima bint Asad alayhi salam, the parents of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, were individuals that held on to the true belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the path that was considered to be the Hanif path, the straight path of Abraham alayhi salam. So first and foremost, to dispel any misconception of who Abu Talib alayhi salam and of who Fatima bint Asad was. Because there are some claims that actually say Abu Talib was a disbeliever in God. And just briefly about Abu Talib. Abu Talib was an individual who protected the Holy Prophet ﷺ and raised the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And the interesting relationship here is beyond protecting and raising the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib was the one who raised the Prophet. And the Prophet in turn raised Imam Ali, the son of Abu Talib. There was such a strong connection between these individuals, beyond family, because you had uncles of the Prophet ﷺ like Abu Jahl, right? And others that did not even care or think about who Muhammad ﷺ was, especially when he came forward with his message. But you see the strong attachment between these individuals. Abu Talib raised Muhammad ﷺ and Muhammad raised Ali, the son of Abu Talib. When we're looking at these individuals and we're seeing these relationships, we see from the very, very core of it, this belief and attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this close relationship. And inshallah, we're not beyond the history, we're going to be talking about the spirituality that comes out of these individuals, being the ones who are the protectors of the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when you look at the birth of Imam Ali alayhi salam, where was this individual born? We said he was born on the 13th of Rajab in the year 600 AD. Where was he born? Imam Ali alayhi salam is recorded to be the only individual in all of history not any prophet, not any other imam, not any person that is considered to be a saint had the privilege of being born in the Kaaba, in the house of God, other than Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. When we see this blessing, now someone might come saying, okay, that's a miracle, that's a blessing from God. Does that influence who he was as an individual? Remember, brothers and sisters, what we talked about in previous nights regarding the ethics of an individual, that their lineage and their genes, what family they come from, gives the person the tendency to do certain acts and be a certain person. Yes, that gave Ali ibn Abi Talib that tendency from the blessing of who his parents were and where he was born and his own family and his genes. So we'll keep it at that. Imam Ali alayhi salam being the only individual to be born in the Kaaba, to be born in the house of God, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is in all of our books, Sunni and Shi'ia, that he was the one who, when his mother was about to give birth, she was near the Kaaba, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the doors of the Kaaba for her, and closed the doors after her, and she gave birth to this immaculate son named Ali. And the first person that Imam Ali alayhi salam opened his eyes to was who? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Where when he was born, his eyes were closed. Until Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi went forward and held Imam Ali alayhi salam in his hands. Imam Ali alayhi salam, that newborn child, opened his eyes, and the first that he saw was the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Now we see from his birth began this relationship with the Holy Prophet. From his childhood, he was brought up by the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And Imam Ali alayhi salam has been recorded to have said in Nahj al-Balagha, where he says, the Holy Prophet brought me up in his own arms and fed me from his own hands. I followed him wherever he went like a baby camel following its mother. I followed him wherever he went, like a baby camel following its mother. Each day, a new aspect of his character would beam out of his noble person, and I would accept it and follow it as a command. A child, a very young child, from his outset, would follow every single step of the Prophet, every single thing that every single thing that he did. We have a beautiful saying that I read the other day. This is not from an immaculate. This is not from a ma'soom. This is something that I found online, and it was an interesting thought, where the person wrote and said, if we were to look at who was the best Sunni, who was the best person to call himself a Sunni, in the essence of a person defining themselves as a Sunni, as a person who follows the tradition of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. If we were to look in history and see who was the best Sunni, we would find no other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He was the best person to follow the message of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And if we were to look and see who was the person who would be the best Shi'i, the best person who, a Shi'i basically is what? A lover of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We found nobody to love Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam more than the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A thought, a beautiful thought, looking at what? Not looking at labels, brothers and sisters. It's not about labels. It's about the relationships that we have with these individuals. When we look at Imam Ali alayhi salam, we see this individual who attached himself in every part of his being to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Imam Ali alayhi salam was just a young boy, and this was at the onset or the advent of the Holy Prophet's declaration of his message. Imam Ali alayhi salam, at this time, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to declare his message, first to the near of his kin, he was about 10 years of age. And what became known as Da'wat al-Ashira. Pay attention to this, brothers and sisters, and see regarding this Da'wat al-Ashira, what came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's revelation to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Surah 26, verse 214, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to invite his near of kin and his relatives, to warn them of the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to tell them, I am the Holy Prophet and there's no God but Allah. At this time, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Imam Ali alayhi salam, this young man, he tells him, I want you to make all the preparations for this dinner that we're going to have, this da'wah. We're going to have a feast, a dinner with our relatives, and we're going to sit with them, and I'm going to declare the message to them. At this young age, the Prophet ﷺ would give Imam Ali alayhi these responsibilities to take out, to represent him and make sure things were done precisely. Imam Ali alayhi went and made all the preparations. He invited all of the uncles. They sat down, they had dinner together. The Prophet ﷺ looks at his uncles, looks at his family members, and he tells them that I am the message of God. I am the messenger of God. And there's no God but He, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one God. Whoever will follow me, whoever will accept my message, whoever will attest to this message that La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah will be my brother, my caliph, and my successor after me. He left it open to everyone, sitting. Who was the individual to come? And by the way, brothers and sisters, we find these narrations, we find these stories, this historical analysis coming from where? From references and sources of all schools. We find it in Sahih Tirmidhi, we find it in Sahih Bukhari, we find it in Sahih Muslim, we find it in a number of books that we find from our Sunni brothers and sisters, that they have these books to be their second only to the Quran in their preciseness. So when we're looking at these stories, we see in this specific incident, who was the one to actually respond and answer to the message of the Holy Prophet? Who was the one to actually answer the call? All of the uncles, well of age, adults, chieftains of their tribe. Most of them mocked the Prophet. Most of them made fun of him, humiliated him. And then, when the only individual to actually respond to the call was the young Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, they even mocked further and humiliated further. Imam Ali alayhi salam would stand and said, I am your supporter, Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked around and saw no one standing for him other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. In that incident, what would the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say? What would he do? From the very beginning, and brothers and sisters, we look and we see that sometimes people come and say that it was only until the event of Ghadir, at the event of Ghadir Khum, where the Holy Prophet declared who would be the successor and protector of the faith after him, and that would be Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. But we see it from the very beginning of the message, the Prophet declared and showed whoever will be coming right now at this instance to support and give and provide and be that pillar, that backbone for me. Like we mentioned in previous nights, your brother is your backbone. And we knew that that backbone of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi was Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's interesting because we have one narration from our Sunni brothers that goes and says that Abu Talib would question Imam Ali alayhi salam as his father in that incident. He would ask him, Imam Ali, he would ask him, he said, Ya Ali, are you sure about this responsibility? Because this is his son, he's a young man. He's about 10 years of age. He said, are you sure about this responsibility, Ya Ali? And Imam Ali alayhi salam would answer and say, Allah did not ask me when He created me. So I have no position to ask anyone that of submitting back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me, there was no question in me submitting to the will of God. So I don't need to ask and question anyone else and see if I should submit back to Him when the call of the Prophet is coming towards me. Showing at that young age how Imam Ali alayhi salam was so embedded in this message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now looking at Imam Ali's adolescence, looking at this individual when he was a young man, he was literally the shadow of the Prophet. He was the one who followed the Prophet in every single thing that he did. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went back to Medina, or went into Mecca and destroyed all of the idols, it was the young Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam that would rise on his shoulders and destroy the idols in support of the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Ali alayhi salam was there in every instance, in every situation to defend the Prophet. So much so, and we've mentioned this in previous nights, so much so that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his message, Islam, would become known to be that it was the religion that would not rise except for two things, and those two things were the defense the defender, Ali ibn Abi Talib and his sword, and the wealth and generosity of Khadija alayhi salam. These two individuals who were the persons to who? To submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to submit to the will of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the message of His Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to be the first individuals to submit to that message. They were with him from the beginning, and they were with him until the end. Khadija and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Now we see a lot of times in pop culture where people will come and they'll say, you weren't with me in the beginning, now you want to come and celebrate my success. That's not going to happen. If the people that were with me in the beginning, I'm going to celebrate my success with. We see this relationship between the Prophet, his wife Khadija alayhi salam, and Imam Ali alayhi salam from the very beginning. Now, we continue and we see, what did the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at this young age say about Imam Ali alayhi salam? What did he say about Imam Ali alayhi salam? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "O Ali, you are my brother in this world and in the next. I am the city of knowledge and you are its gate. Nobody knows you except me and God. And nobody knows me except God and you. And nobody truly knows God except you and me." The Prophet ﷺ establishing that relationship for us from the very beginning of who Imam Ali ﷺ was. Now continuing. What did Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ do as a young adult? Beyond his adolescence, beyond being there for the Prophet and being his student, his companion, and following everything that the Prophet asked and did, Imam Ali ﷺ in his young adulthood would be tasked by the Holy Prophet in that journey towards Medina, when the Prophet wanted to go to Medina, because there was a threat in the Prophet's life. Imagine the scene, brothers and sisters, when at the time, because of so much hate towards the Prophet, because of his message, he had to task Imam Ali alayhi salam to take care of things for him as he would go in the night to escape Mecca and go towards Medina. There were so many different assassination attempts on the Prophet's life from the very beginning, because the people saw, the people that were against Muhammad, they saw that this message that the Prophet is bringing, a message of liberation, a message of equality, a message of justice, where you can't look at an individual because of the color of their skin and say, this person is my slave. You can't look at a female, a woman, and say, she's lower than me simply because she's a female. That every single individual in the realm of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, in the realm of Islam, was enfranchised by that message of the Holy Prophet. So at this time, when there was a threat on the Prophet's life, the Prophet tasks Imam Ali alayhi salam with three things. The first being to take his place at night and sleep where he slept, and the Prophet would go in the middle of the night to escape the assassination attempt that the Prophet knew about. So there were individuals coming and they were plotting, they wanted to kill the Prophet. So the Prophet ﷺ tells Imam Ali, he says, would you be willing to take my place and risk your life in the protection of mine? Imam Ali alayhi salam, some narrations would say, that he would say, my spirit, my soul, my body, and my everything are at your command, Ya Rasulullah. And the Imam would go into sujood and say, Ash-shukru lillah, Ash-shukru lillah, Ash-shukru lillah. Thank God, thank God, thank God for this blessing upon me. And as the story would go, that the Imam alayhi salam would take the place of the Prophet. The people that were coming to assassinate the Prophet would come. Imam Ali alayhi salam would uncover the sheets, take out his sword and say, who dares to come and threaten the life of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi? And because they knew the bravery of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they would leave. The second task that the Prophet gave Imam Ali alayhi salam was to return all the trusts that were deposited with the Prophet. And the justice of Imam Ali alayhi salam was shown in this situation. In every single moment, in every single situation, the wisdom and his justice was shown, because he gave everyone their due right, even when tested by some people who said, well, we had a right with Muhammad. Imam Ali alayhi salam, through his wisdom, would verify and make sure what exactly was the right, and show the people that you can't fool with the people that are protecting Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third task was to bring the three Fatimas back to Medina or going to Medina to where the Prophet ﷺ would be. Now, who are the three Fatimas? First, the daughter of the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And by the way, this was before Imam Ali ﷺ was married to Fatima ﷺ. The first Fatima being the daughter of the Holy Prophet. The second Fatima being his mother Fatima bint Asad. And the third Fatima being his cousin Fatima bint Hamza. The Prophet ﷺ would task him to bring all three Fatimas. On Imam Ali's way to bringing them, securing them on the way to Medina, they say that he was attacked so many times by different troops, by different individuals coming to threaten the life of the Prophet and his family. He was attacked so many times that by the time he finally got to what was Masjid Quba at the outskirts of Medina, by the time he actually got there, Imam Ali alayhi salam had more than 70 wounds in his body. Everything that Imam Ali alayhi salam was doing was in service of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam since he was a young man, since he was a young boy. At this time, Imam Ali alayhi salam was in the early 20s. Now we ask ourselves, brothers and sisters, in our early 20s, what are we doing? When we say, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, and we're proud of our attachment to Imam Ali alayhi salam, what is our real attachment to Imam Ali alayhi salam? Are we individuals, and by the way, it doesn't necessarily come with holding a sword and going and defending somebody. There are many different ways for us to defend our own, to defend our faith, to defend our principles. And that first and foremost comes with what? Dealing with that struggle within ourselves so that we follow the principles of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who followed the principles of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Imam Ali alayhi salam got to Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ welcomed him with open arms, looking at this champion of God that defended every single principle that the Prophet ﷺ stood for. He welcomed him, and he initiated something called, what would become known as the Pact of Brotherhood. In this Pact of Brotherhood, what the Prophet ﷺ wanted to do, there was a strategy here. The Prophet ﷺ wanted to bring the individuals that left Mecca, al-Muhajirun, and the people that were hosting them, al-Ansar in Medina, bring them together and create a brotherhood between the individuals. Because as we know, at that time, there were so many different tribes, there were so many different people, so many different groups. There was diversity in a sense. And each group was to their own. What the Prophet ﷺ wanted to do, he wanted to destroy all barriers and bring people together as brothers and sisters in Islam, under the banner of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, under the banner of God, under this banner of La ilaha illallah. So the Prophet ﷺ joined and attached or brought together one person from the Ansar, one person from Medina, and a person from Mecca, min al-Muhajirun. Now at the finality of it, who stands without a brother? Imam Ali alayhi salam. And Imam Ali alayhi salam looks at the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and he asked the Prophet, said, Ya Rasulullah, you didn't pair me with anyone. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi smiles, and he looks at Imam Ali alayhi salam and he says, there's no brother to you other than me, Ya Ali. There's no brother to you other than me, Ya Ali. Now the Prophet ﷺ, notice over this time how many different instances that he is not only showing this relationship with Imam Ali alayhi salam and having that bond with Imam Ali alayhi salam, but showing the people around him, this is my brother, this is my protector, this is my successor, this is the individual who held on to the faith and what I propagated from its very onset. We continue. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Holy Prophet ﷺ to close all of the doors of the people's homes that were attached to the masjid, attached to the mosque of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a very well-known story, where the Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to close off all of the doors that the companions' homes were attached to the masjid, because a lot of the companions had built homes that were connected directly to the masjid, and any one of them, whether you could open the door and then just go directly into the mosque. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Holy Prophet ﷺ to have all the doors shut except the door of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We continue. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ, after the Hijrah, when he was challenged by people of different faiths, people of different belief systems, people of different religions, specifically in this situation, the Christians of Najran. And the Christians of Najran came and they challenged the Holy Prophet ﷺ and said that we want to have a great debate with you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Holy Prophet ﷺ in what became known as Ayat al-Mubahala, verse 61 of Surah Ali Imran, where the Prophet ﷺ is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to a mubahala, an exchange, a discussion, a dialogue, where the Prophet was told by God that tell them, call on to them, to bring on their sons and your sons, their women and your women, and yourselves and their selves. Now who did the Holy Prophet ﷺ bring in this situation? In this great debate, in this great challenge to people outside of the faith of Islam that would come to challenge the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Our sons, our women, and ourselves. Our sons, he would bring who? Al-Hasan wal-Hussein. And how old were they? They were about 5 and 6 years of age. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, in this instance, as commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's establishing to the world, establishing not only to the Muslims, but establishing to the people outside of Islam, who is the representative of this faith. Our sons, our women, and ourselves. Our sons being Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein. Our women, one woman, Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra alayhi salam, his daughter. Ourselves, the Prophet ﷺ and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Because the Prophet ﷺ would tell Ali ibn Abi Talib, would tell the world that you and I, Ya Ali, are the fathers of this nation. You and I, Ali, are the protectors of this nation. You and I, Ali, are like Moses and Aaron. I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. Whoever wishes to enter the city must enter through its gate. Now, brothers and sisters, when we see this relationship, when we look at history, people will question you, people will ask, people will inquire, why the attachment to Ali ibn Abi Talib? Why the attachment to this person, Imam Ali? Why? Why whenever you do something, you get up and you say, Ya Ali? Why whenever you think of something, you say, Ya Ali? Why this tawassul? Why this connection? Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Why this connection? Why this attachment? Why this relationship that you continue to make sure that this is what you identify with yourself? Why? Well, we say because the Holy Prophet ﷺ was the one who established through his tradition, through his word, through his message, that if you wish to come to me, if you wish to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is only through that individual named Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Now, brothers and sisters, what we'd like to do, inshallah, and we're going to be continuing these nights and looking at this history, we're also going to be at the very end looking at an example of the spirituality of Imam Ali alayhi salam and setting the example for us, not only as the representative of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, but as an individual who truly exemplified this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through speaking to God. And one of the best examples that we have is through the supplication that, inshallah, we all at least have heard of, Dua Kumayl. Dua Kumayl ibn Ziyad. Now some people might ask, why is this called Dua Kumayl? Dua Kumayl ibn Ziyad is a supplication that Imam Ali alayhi salam taught Kumayl ibn Ziyad, one of his companions. He taught him this dua. He told him, this is how you speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how you address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is your explanation. This is your expression of your faith, of your belief, of your feeling, of your thought with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, brothers and sisters, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go into a few verses and end with that, and then continue in the next 2 nights with looking at the history, and inshallah every night ending with these few verses so that we can understand maybe a drop of the ocean of the spirituality and knowledge that is Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. My God, my Lord, my Master, my Protector, for which things would I complain to you? For which things will I complain to you? And for which of them should I lament and weep? For the pain and the severity of my chastisement, or for the length and period of the tribulation? فَلَئِنْ صَيَّرْتَنِي لِلْعُقُوبَاتِ مَا أَعْدَائِكَ وَجَمَعْتَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ أَهْلِي بَلَائِكَ وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك. So if you take me to the punishments with your enemies, if you take me towards these punishments with your enemies, and you gather me with the people of your tribulation, and separate me from your friends and your saints, فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك. وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. Then suppose, my God, my Master, my Protector and my Lord, that I am able to endure your chastisement. Suppose I am able to endure your chastisement. How can I endure the separation from you? How can I endure the separation from you? And suppose, Ya Allah, suppose that I can endure the heat of your fire. وَهَبْنِي صَبَرْتُ عَلَى حَرِّ نَارِكَ فَكَيْفَ أَصْبِرُ عَنِ النَّظَرِ إِلَى كَرَامَتِكَ. Suppose that I am able to endure the heat of your fire, then how can I endure gazing upon your generosity? أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك. How can I dwell in the fire while my hope is your pardon and your mercy? With that, brothers and sisters, we'll end and we'll direct ourselves, like we have been in every single night, towards the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajah, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the hastening of his reappearance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kulli walika al-Hujjati ibn al-Hasan. صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.